Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod's IAS classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to discuss about the third chapter of the Lakshmikant, that is the salient features of the Indian Constitution. So if you see some of the introduction regarding the salient features, already we know the Indian Constitution, it is unique in its contents and also the spirit. Though this Indian Constitution, which is borrowed from the every constitution which is present in the world, it has the several salient features that will differentiate the Indian Constitution from the other constitutions. So in this lecture, we are going to see about the important salient features that are present in our constitution. So in this lecture, we are going to discuss about 17 salient features of the Indian Constitution. So let us see what are those. So we are going to discuss about the first one is the lengthiest written constitution, and the second one it is drawn from the various sources, and under this heading we are going to discuss about the philosophical part, structural part and also the political part. And next one is a blend of rigidity and flexibility, and the federal system with the unitary bias. So what is a federal? We saw there is a differentiation of the powers between the center and the state. So we see there is a proper differentiation of the functions between the center and the state. They comes under the federal. So what is the unitary? Unitary means the upper hand of the center over the states, and there is no proper division of the powers between the center and the states, mainly seen in the unitary type of the government. And the next one is a parliamentary form of government. So if you see, there are two types of the governments. First one is a parliamentary form and second one is a presidential form. So if you see, for example, America, USA follows the presidential form of government, but India adopted the parliamentary form of the government which we taken, okay. And the next one is a synthesis of the parliamentary sovereignty and the judicial supremacy. And the next important salient feature we are going to discuss is integrated and independent judiciary. So what are the integrated features and what are the independent features of the judiciary that is present in the India? So if you see the level of the judiciary, at the apex court is the Supreme Court, and in every state there will be the High Court, and in every district we see there is a district court. So if you draw the pyramid, it will be like that. So at the apex court we see Supreme Court is present, and at the middle, at the state level, we see High Court is present, and at the lower courts, that is district courts, are present in the district level. And the next one is the fundamental rights. It is very important and it is enshrined in the part 3 of our Indian Constitution. And the next one is DPSP, that is the Directive Principles of the State Policy, and it is enshrined in the part 4 of the Indian Constitution. And the next one is the fundamental duties. This fundamental duties, it is not present in our Indian Constitution, so it is added to our Constitution mainly through the Constitutional Amendment Act. And the next one is a secular state. So this is the positive concept of the secularism that is followed by the India. If you see the other countries, mostly the Western countries, they follow the negative concept of the secularism. They separate the entirely religion from the state. But in India, we respect all the religions equally. And the next one is universal adult franchise. It is talking about the elections. And the next one is the single citizenship. So as a person who is present in any state in the India, he will possess the citizenship of the India, but not the state. So if we have the state and also the center, some countries we have the citizenship which is given by the state and also the center. So there will be the dual citizens, for example USA. But in India, though we have the federal, but we follow the single citizenship, that is the Indian citizenship. And the next one is an independent body. In our constitution, we have the many constitutional bodies are present, and also we see there are many statutory bodies also present, and these statutory bodies are made by an act passed by the parliament. And also we saw there are independent bodies also present. The examples includes Election Commission of India, and also the UPSC, Union Public Service Commission, State Public Service Commission, etc. And the next one is emergency provisions. If you see in our constitution, there are 3 important articles which are mainly talking about the 3 types of the emergency provisions. The first one is Article 352, that talks about the national emergency, and Article 356 that talks about the state emergency, or it is also called as the President's Rule, and Article 360 that talks about the financial emergency. And there is a 3-tier government. Mainly this 3-tier government came in the government mainly with the 73rd and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1992. Through this, we came up with the decentralization, that is democratic decentralization, and that gave the constitutional status to the panchayats and also the municipalities. Panchayats in the local areas and the municipalities in the urban areas. And the last one, it is about the cooperative societies, and these are added by the 97th Constitutional Amendment Act. And these cooperative societies, it is talked in the fundamental rights, it is also talked in the directive principles of the state policy, and also the 9th B schedule. Okay, so let us discuss one by one in the great detail. The first one is the lengthiest written constitution. If you are talking about the constitution, mainly there are two types of the constitution. The first one is the written constitution and second one is the non-written constitution. For example of this written constitution is the American Constitution, and the non-written constitution or the unwritten constitution, it is a British Constitution. So if we see the Indian Constitution, it is a written constitution and it is very lengthy, because we see the provisions which are detailedly and clearly written and they are elaborated such that we see this constitution is a very lengthy constitution. And originally, whenever this constitution was enforced in the 1949, the constitution contained a preamble and it contains about 395 articles, and they are mainly divided into 22 parts and the 8 schedules. Presently, till 2019, there are many amendments made and there are many articles which are added to this Indian Constitution, and at present there are about 470 articles, and these are mainly divided into 25 parts and the 12 schedules. So what are the factors that led to the lengthiest written constitution in India? There are 4 important factors. The first one is the geographical factors. Because if you see the India, it is a very vast and also the population is very much high. So we see there are different religious groups which are living in the India, and we also see different race people are present. So to satisfy all the people, there are different articles which are included in the Constitution of the India. So it led to the lengthiest constitution. And the second one is historical factors. So most part of our constitution which is taken from the Government of India Act of 1935 itself. This Government of India Act of 1935, it is the lengthiest one. So that led to the lengthiest constitution of the India. And the next one is a single constitution. What is the meaning of the single constitution? For the center and as well as the state, there is a one constitution, that is the Constitution of India. So it is a very lengthy. And the next one is there is a dominance of the legal luminaries in the Constituent Assembly. The example is the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar itself. So this is about the lengthiest written constitution. And let us see the second one, that is drawn from the various sources. As we know, our constitution which is borrowed from the different countries, almost every constitution present in the world at that time. So because of that borrowing of these features of the other constitutions into this Indian Constitution, we cannot say simply it is a copy and paste constitution. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar proudly acclaimed that the Constitution of the India, it has been framed after ransacking the all known constitutions of the world. So what is the meaning of the ransacking? That means the picking up of the what are the important things that are present in that constitution and incorporating in our constitution. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar proudly said that he acclaimed that the Constitution of the India has been referred or has been framed after the ransacking all the known constitutions of the world. And if you see, we are talking about the structural part, philosophical part and also the political part. If you see the structural part, it is taken from the Government of India Act of 1935. Almost most of the constitution which is taken from this act. And the next one is philosophical part. Whenever you are talking about the philosophical part, that comes into the mind of every aspirant is about the fundamental rights and the DPSP, that is Directive Principles of the State Policy. These fundamental rights, they are taken from the USA Constitution, and the DPSP, it is taken from the Irish Constitution. And the next, if you talk about the political part, it is taken from the British Constitution or the Britain Constitution. So not only these three, there are also other provisions or the other features which are taken from the Canada, USSR, Australia, Japan, etc. Okay. So let us see the next important salient feature, that is the blend of rigidity and flexibility. If you see the constitution, there are mainly two types. One is rigid constitution and the second one is flexible constitution. So when you are talking about the rigid, it is very difficult to amend the constitution. So the example of this rigid constitution is USA, and the flexible means it is very easy to amend the constitution. It is as simple as amending the ordinary laws. So this type of constitution which is seen in the Britain constitution. If you see the Indian constitution, it is neither rigid nor flexible, but it is a synthesis of both the rigid and flexible. So if you see one important article which is talking about the amending of the constitution, that is Article 368. This Article 368 of Indian constitution talks about the power of the parliament mainly to amend the constitution. So it talks about mainly two types of the amendments. The first amendment is a special majority. That means not less than 2/3 of the members who are present and the voting. And it talks about another majority, that is 2/3 of the members who are present and voting. It also needs the ratification of the state's legislature also. Ratification of the state legislature. That means more than 50% of the state should accept this, that with a simple majority. So if you see this Article 368, it talks about mainly two types of the majority. First one is the special majority. That means not less than 2/3 of the members present and the voting, that should be accepted. And the second important amendment or second important types of the majority is special majority plus more than half of the ratification of the state assemblies through the simple majority. So when you are talking about the second type of majority, it is mainly whenever there is a change in the federal character. That means if at all any important thing which should be accepted by both the center and the state, then it requires this ratification by the state legislative assemblies. So let us see the next important feature. It is a federal system with a unitary bias. So what is a federal? There is a proper division of the powers between the center and the state. It is called as federal. So what is a unitary? Unitary means the center will prevail over the states. So center, it is a more powerful than compared to that of the state. It is called as unitary. So if you see, India contains a federal system with unitary bias. So if you see the federal features which are present in the Indian constitution, they include the two governments are present, the government at the center and also the government at the state. And the second one is there is a proper division of the powers is present. According to the Schedule 7, we have the union list, we have the state list and we have the concurrent list. On the union list, the government or the central government did have the power to make the laws. And regarding the state list, the state government have the power to make the laws. And regarding the concurrent list, both the center and the state have the power to make the laws. If you see our constitution is the written constitution, it is one of the important feature of the federal character. And the next one is supremacy of the constitution, and we have the rigidity of the constitution and also independent judiciary and also bicameralism. It is a bicameralism only at the center level but not at the state level, because at the central level we have the upper house and the lower house, as we all know. If you see in the state, we have the upper house and the lower house only in some states but not all the state. So we see the bicameralism, it is present only at the central level. And the next one is a unitary or non-federal features. They include a strong center. There is a single constitution for both the center and the state. And the next one is a single citizenship. There is no dual citizenship. And the next one is there is a flexibility of the constitution. And the next one is integrated judiciary and the appointment of the state governor by the center. This is the important feature for the unitary system. And the next one is All India Services. This All India Services, it makes the center more powerful. And the next one is emergency provisions. So these are some of the important examples for the unitary features that are present in our Indian constitution. So if you see the one important statement, whether federation which is present in our constitution or not, the word federation, no. The word federation which is not present in our Indian constitution, but Article 1 of our Indian constitution, it talks about the union of the state. So when you are talking about the union of the states, it tells about two important things. The first one is India, it is formed not because of the agreement of the states which is given. Okay. So India, it is a union which is not formed by the agreement which is made by the state, unlike the USA. And the second important one is the state do not have the right to secede from the union. So these are the two important statements that you should remember regarding the union of the states. And let us see the important feature next one, that is the parliamentary form of the government. Whenever you talk about the forms of the government, they are mainly two types. First one is the presidential form and second one is the parliamentary form. If you see what is the difference between the parliamentary form and the presidential system, it is very important regarding the prelims point of view. So to understand this, first let me give you the example for the presidential system and the parliamentary system. The example for the parliamentary system is our India and the presidential system is USA. So what is the difference between the parliamentary system and the presidential system? So if you see this parliamentary system, it is mainly based on the principles of cooperation and also coordination that is seen between the legislative and also the executive organs. So there is a proper coordination and also the cooperation between the legislative and the executive that is seen in the parliamentary system. If you see about the presidential system, there is a doctrine of separation of the powers between the two organs. There is no link between the executive and there is no link between the legislature. So these are the two individual entities. Okay, but if you see in the parliamentary system, the legislative and the executive, they have the proper cooperation and also the coordination. Okay, so these are the two important differences between the parliamentary system and also the presidential system. You should not remember even while you are sleeping as well. So if you see some of the important features of this parliamentary system of the government in India, they include there is a presence of the nominal and the real executive. So what is the example for this nominal? That is the nominal executive, that is the president is present. Okay, and the real is the prime minister. And the next one, we see there is a majority party rule. So for example, we have the 545 seats in the Lok Sabha. If at all they get any 270 seats or half of them, then they will make the government, they will form the government. So in the India, we see there is a majority party rule that is prevalent. And the next one is the collective responsibility of the executive to the legislature. So we already studied that there is a coordination and also the cooperation between the legislature and the executive is present. So in this way, there is a collective responsibility. They should swim and sink together. We see this frame. Okay, so there is a collective responsibility of the executive to the legislature is seen. And the next important feature is the membership of the ministers in the legislature. So the ministers, they are present in the executive and also the legislature. These members were picked from the legislature. The executive, it is formed from the legislature. And the next one is there is the leadership of the prime minister or the chief minister. Prime minister at the central level and the chief minister at the state level. And the important feature is there is a dissolution of the lower house both at the central level and also the state level for every 5 years. Okay, so these are some of the important features of the parliamentary system of the government. And let us see the next important feature, that is a synthesis of the parliamentary sovereignty and the judicial supremacy. So if you see, there is a proper synthesis between these parliamentary sovereignty and also the judicial supremacy in the Indian parliamentary system. So if you see this parliamentary sovereignty, and there is a American thing, that is a judicial supremacy. If you see this judicial supremacy in America, they follow the due process of law. Okay, that means there is a proper synthesis between the parliamentary sovereignty and also the judicial supremacy. That means we know there is a constitution. If at all any need is there to change the constitution, the parliament will come up with the amendments and it will make the laws. Okay, correct? So if at all these laws are correct or not, it is said by the judiciary. If at all these laws are not according to our constitution or not according to our laws, then these are made unconstitutional and made the null and void by the Supreme Court. So if you see the statement here, Supreme Court on one hand, it can declare the parliamentary laws as unconstitutional to the power of the judicial review. This is very important. And the next one is the parliament on other hand, it can amend the major portion of the constitution through its constitutional power. So the parliament have the power to make the constitutional amendments, and again the judiciary have the power to make the laws which is made by this parliament to make the unconstitutional, that is null and void, if does not follow the rules. Okay, let us see the next important salient feature. It is the integrated and the independent judiciary. So to understand this, we have to draw one pyramid diagram. So at the lower levels, we have the district courts or the lower courts, and at the middle level, we have the high court, and at the top or the apex court, that is the Supreme Court. If you see the Supreme Court, it is a federal court and it is the highest court of appeal. So how the appeal process will take place? From the district court, the appeal will go to the high court, and from the high court, it will go to the Supreme Court. So in this way, the appealing process will go. So it is the highest court of appeal in the India, and also it is a guarantor of the fundamental rights of the citizen and also the guardian of the constitution. So this statement you can use when you are writing the answers regarding the judiciary. And if you see what are the features which are present regarding the independence of the judiciary and integrated judiciary. So if you see, there are some provisions that will ensure the independence of the judiciary. They include, the first one is security of the tenure of the judges. It is fixed, and there is a fixed service condition for the judges, and all expenses of the Supreme Court will be charged from the Consolidated Fund of India. So there will not be there any voting in the parliament regarding the salaries, because they are the charged expenditure. And the next one is the prohibition on the discussion on the conduct of the judges in the legislature. And the next important thing is there is a ban on the practice after the retirement as well. And they have the power to punish the contempt vested with the Supreme Court and also the High Court. And these have the two important contempts. And the next one is the separation of the judiciary from the executive. So this was enshrined in the Article 50 of our Indian Constitution. So these are the some provisions that will ensure the independence of the judiciary. And the next one is about integrated. So integrated means Supreme Court and High Court and also the lower court, they will enforce both the union laws and also the state laws. So in this way, they are integrated with one another. So let us see the next important salient feature, that is the fundamental rights. These fundamental rights, they are enshrined in the part 3 of our Indian Constitution, and the articles which are including from the Article 12 to the Article 35. So if you see, there are mainly 6 fundamental rights that are guaranteed by our Constitution, and they include, the first one is right to equality. They are from Article 14 to Article 18, and the second one is the right to freedom, that is from the Article 19 to Article 22. And the third important right is right against exploitation, that is from the Article 23 to Article 24. And the next one is the right to freedom of the religion, that is from the Article 25 to 28. And the next one is the cultural and the educational rights, that is from the Article 29 to Article 30. And the right to constitutional remedies, that is Article 32. This right to constitutional remedies, it is the soul of the fundamental rights. And the next one, it is regarding the fundamental rights that is important, is fundamental rights which aim to promote the political democracy. And if at all any fundamental rights of the individual it is violated, then he have the right to go to the Supreme Court directly, and this is under the writs. There are mainly 5 writs in our Indian Constitution. First one is habeas corpus, second one is a mandamus, prohibition, certiorari, and the quo warranto. These are the 5 important rights that were talked in the Article 32 of the Indian Constitution. And the next important feature is about directive principles of the state policy, and it is enshrined in the part 4 of Indian Constitution, and the articles which are included from the Article 36 to Article 51. And if you see this directive principles of the state policy, it is one of the novel feature of the Indian Constitution, and these are mainly meant for the promoting the idea of the social and the economic democracy. And if you are talking about the fundamental rights, it is mainly to provide the political democracy, but this DPSP is for the economic and also the social democracy. And the important feature, it is they seek to establish the welfare state in the India, and they are enumerated or enshrined in the part 4 of Indian Constitution. And if you see these fundamental rights, they are mainly divided into 3 types. First one is the socialistic, second one is the Gandhian, third one is the liberal intellectual, DPSPs. And let us see the 10th important feature, that is the fundamental duties. There are total 11 fundamental duties. Out of them, the 10 were added one time, and last one which is added by the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act. Actually, these fundamental duties, they are not present in our original constitution, and these duties, they are added based on the recommendations of the one important committee. You should remember that, that is a Swaran Singh committee. And according to the recommendations of the Swaran Singh committee, Parliament came up with the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976, and it added 10 fundamental duties. And later on, through 86th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2002, it added one more fundamental duty. So now there are 11 fundamental duties in total. And these fundamental duties, they serve as a reminder to the citizens that while they are enjoying their rights, that is the fundamental rights, it says that they have also to be quite conscious of their duties to owe to their country, to owe to their society, and to owe to their fellow citizens as well. So these are the mainly reminders to the citizens, and you should quite conscious about the duties that you should do to the country. And the next important feature is the secular state. When you are talking about the secularism, there are two important concepts regarding the secularism. The first one is the negative concept. Second one is the positive concept. When we are talking about the negative concept, the example is the Western countries. When you are talking about the positive concept, that is example is India itself. So first of all, what is the meaning of the secular? The term secular, it is not present originally in our preamble. Mainly in the preamble, it is added through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. And if you see this preamble, it secures all the citizens of the India the liberty of the belief, liberty of the faith, and the liberty of the worship. So first of all, let us discuss about the positive concept and what is the negative concept. So if you see the negative concept, the religion which is entirely separated from the state. So this is the negative concept, and we see this concept mainly in the Western countries. And if you see the positive concept, here we are going to protect all the religions equally. So we are respecting all the religions and we are protecting all the religions equally. So it is a positive concept of the religion. In this we have followed in our India. So if you see the Indian constitution, which is embodies the positive concept of the secularism, that means giving the equal respect to all the religions or protecting all the religions equally. And this secularism, which is reflected in the preamble, and in the preamble it is added through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976, and other parts of the constitution like the Article 14, Article 15, Article 16, Article 25 to 30, they are talking about the fundamental rights. They talk about the secularism. And Article 44, which is talking about the DPSP, it is also talking about the secularism. And let us see the next important feature, that is the universal adult franchise. So what is a universal adult franchise? If at all any woman or any man, any human who is not less than the 18 years of the age, he will be eligible for the elections. Okay, he will be eligible for the right to vote, mainly for the Lok Sabha and also the state legislative assembly. So if you see the Indian constitution, which adopted the universal adult franchise, it is a basis of the elections to the Lok Sabha and also the state legislative assembly. So it means every citizen who are present in the India who is not less than 18 years of the age, it has he or she may have the right to vote without any discrimination based on the caste, based on the religion, based on the race, based on the sex, based on the literacy, based on the wealth, etc. Okay, so there is no discrimination, whoever may be. If he or she attains 18 years of age, he will have the right to vote. And the voting age was reduced from the 21 years to the 18 years in 1998, mainly by the 61st Constitutional Amendment Act of the 1988. Okay, so this is the important prelims fact that you should remember. The voting age, which is decreased from 21 years to 18 years through 61st Constitutional Amendment Act. Let us see the next salient feature, that is a single citizenship. Though Indian constitution is a federal constitution, and it envisages a dual polity, that is the government at the central level and also the government at the state level, though it provides only the single citizenship, that is the Indian citizenship. So if you see the countries like the USA will provide the central citizenship and also the citizenship of the each state to which he belongs. So if you see the India, it will provide only single citizenship, that is the Indian citizenship. And let us see the next one, that is the independent bodies. So if you see, the Indian Constitution not only provides for the legislative, not only provides for the executive, and not only provides for the judicial organs of the government at the state level and also central level, it also establishes some of the independent bodies as well. The examples of these independent bodies, they include the Election Commission of India and also the Union Public Service Commission, Comptroller General of India, and also the State Public Service Commission. And the next important salient feature is the emergency provisions. So if you see the Indian Constitution, it enshrines or it envisages majorly the three types of the emergencies. They include the national emergency, state emergency, and also the financial emergency. The national emergency, it is on the grounds of the war or any external aggression or armed rebellion, and which is talked in the Article 352 of our Indian Constitution. And if you see the state emergency, it is also called as a President's Rule, mainly on the two important grounds. The first one is the ground on which the failure of the constitutional machinery in the state, and this report will be made by the governor and it will send to the president. And the next one is the failure to comply with the direction of the state according to the Article 365. So according to these two grounds, if at all there is any failure of any one of the ground, there will be the imposition of the President's Rule in the state. And the next one is the financial emergency, and it is on the grounds of the any threat to the financial stability or the credit of the India. Under Article 360, this financial emergency will be imposed. So till now, this financial emergency which is not imposed in the India. And if you see the next important feature, that is a three-tier government. In the India, we see there are three-tier government: central level, state level, and at the local level we see there are panchayats and also the municipalities. The constitutional status for this panchayats and also the municipalities, which are given through the 73rd and also 74th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1992. So through these Constitutional Amendment Acts, they added a third tier of the government at the local level, that is in the rural areas, that is panchayats, and in the urban areas, that is the municipalities, and they led to the democratic decentralization in India. And if you see the next important salient feature, that is the cooperative societies. These cooperative societies, they are added to the Indian Constitution mainly through the 97th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2011. So through this Constitutional Amendment Act of 2011, that is the 97th Constitutional Amendment Act, it gave the constitutional status and also the protection to these cooperative societies. So in this context, because of this 97th Constitutional Amendment Act, they made the several changes to the constitution. The first one is, it made the right to form the cooperative societies, it is a fundamental right under Article 19(1) subclass C. And the next one is, it is also included in the DPSP, that is the Directive Principles of the State Policy, on the promotion of the cooperative societies under Article 43B as well. And the next one is, it also added the new part, that is 9B in the constitution, and which is entitled as the cooperative societies. And these cooperative societies, the articles which are relating to these cooperative societies, that include from the Article 243ZX, ZH to 243ZT. So by this, we completed this section. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like, share and comment my videos. Thank you.